In this interview, I will be chatting with Dr. Jarell Garcia, the Associate Director of Campus Recreation at Rhode Island University. Dr. Jarell Garcia has spent over a decade learning and understanding the application of transferable skills between sports. Throughout this interview, we chat about children's Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. We cover topics around psychology, understanding child development, and essentially what children's needs are when they're training on the mats. I'm really looking forward to hearing what you guys have to say about this one, so please leave some comments below. And before we get started, like and subscribe to my channel and follow along on the Art of Coaching Instagram, where I share daily tips and tricks for Brazilian Jiu Jitsu coaches just like you. Let's dive in. Okay, I'm really excited for this one, Jarell. So it's really nice to meet you. And I know we've been chatting a little bit backwards and forwards sort of on the Art of Coaching. And I love what you bring to my platform. I love the way that you engage with people. I really like that your knowledge is accessible to people as well. Like whenever you comment anything, it's always really accessible for people to understand. And I can see that you have like a wealth of knowledge, and I'm really excited to pick your brain.
Oh, it's that intro.
I know, right? So please tell me a little bit about yourself.
All right, so I guess formally Dr. Jarell Garcia. So currently I'm the Associate Director of Recreation at the University of Rhode Island, but I'm also a professor. So I teach graduate research courses, so the foundations of research and how research is done and understood. And then I also teach at University of Brown, teaching leadership courses and sports psychology-based courses. So my doctoral research is specifically on athletic identity, so how sports influences how we view the world and our lives and stuff along those lines. But my background is primarily in coaching and leadership in sports. So athlete development, so from youth athletes all the way to professional, and more importantly, beyond sports. So that's kind of like the quick snippet of my academic, I guess, worlds. I primarily focus was in soccer initially, but then over the course of the past 15 years, I've been training jiu-jitsu. I got my black belt in 2020 in Temple Jiu-Jitsu from Zach Maslany and JM Holland out of Temple of Bethlehem in Allentown.
Congratulations. What an amazing, look, I gave you an introduction. You don't need an introduction. You just introduce yourself. It sounds so interesting. How did you find yourself in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu? Like, how did you find, because you said you were doing soccer and that was sort of the primarily, so how did you find Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu?
So I'd say it was twofold. One, I have an older brother who is in the Army or was in the Army, retired now. And as what any siblings do, anytime he would come home, we would fight.
Of course.
And so one of the times he came home, obviously had been training for a good amount of time, and he put me in a rear naked choke. So he had taken my back and had put it in a choke. He's like, "Oh, you need a tap or I'm going to put you to sleep." And I was like, "Well, that's just in movies. That's not real." And then he proceeded to put me unconscious. So after waking up, I was like, wow, I should definitely learn this. That was pretty cool. So that was probably one of the first triggers of it. And then that was also in 2008, 2009. So UFC was pretty big as well. So I started watching UFC and I was like, wow, this is really cool. So I made my transition from soccer, which I wasn't playing competitively in college. So I made the transition from soccer into a local MMA school. And from there, from MMA, started focusing primarily on jiu-jitsu and just loved the culture, the community. And then the studies I was doing, I found it directly connected to the martial arts aspect as well. So it was just, it's been the journey ever since. So 15 years in of strictly jiu-jitsu now.
That sounds wonderful. So it just kind of came like a natural progression. And I'm super interested in what you're doing sort of through your university work. As we shared a little bit, I'm studying psychology at the moment. I'm just doing a postgrad diploma at the moment. It's probably going to take me a few years to get there, but the sports psychology thing is very, very interesting to me. So I'm very interested to hear how you found that your academic background was then sort of translating over into what you were doing in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. So can you share a little bit about what you were finding as you were progressing through?
For sure. So my biggest, I guess, when it came to my doctoral research was growing up, we all hear that sports is an avenue to develop our character, all these different character traits, right? Leadership and teamwork and grit and resilience and all these positive things. And I was like, well, that's awesome. And I believe that as I went throughout sports throughout my whole entire life. But then as I got older, I had the question of, is that just an innate part of sports? As in, if you participate in sports, you will automatically gain these skills. And all of us have stories or have seen professional athletes or even our own high school or primary school athletes that were great on the field or the court or what have you, but then lacked some of those character traits outside of the sport. So that's what, like, for me, was the big question was, is sports truly helping us develop these skills, or is it just completely isolated? And then more importantly, as a practitioner or a coach or as a leader, how can I play the tiniest role in having people connect those two things? So I applied that to jiu-jitsu, and I started saying like black belt lifestyle because we associate certain positive character traits with someone who has a black belt, right? Them being hardworking, resilient, empathetic, communicative, um, uh, having their emotional intelligence, right, in regards to their ego in check. But once again, we have seen where they don't necessarily display those things off out of the mat. So for me, it was something that really just tied into my coaching, which was great if you become great at jiu-jitsu. Cool. But I'd much rather you become decent at jiu-jitsu and be able to apply those traits to outside and become a great father or partner or employee or a member of your community. So that was my big tying bond for anyone that's worked with me as their coach.
That sounds fantastic and 100% true. I mean, we see it at the highest level where we have fantastic athletes, but maybe questionable behaviors off the mats.
Yeah.
So I definitely think, yeah, that's a very, very good point. So then, how do you think that we as coaches develop that? How do you think that, because I'm a blue belt. I've been a blue belt for quite a while. And the only reason that I can coach is not through my jiu-jitsu because my jiu-jitsu is terrible. It's like, no, it's not terrible. It's not terrible. But I'm not an athlete and I'm not pretending to be an athlete. That's not my role. But it's come from my education background and now through studying psychology and things like that. So I think sometimes it can get a little bit confusing for people when they start to take on coaching, particularly in kids coaching, where they think because they've got these amazing skills that it automatically translates, and it doesn't. So how do you see us as coaches? What's the missing link here? What do you think we need to develop to be able to translate skills better, to create better people? Not necessarily the skill of jiu-jitsu, but better people, like you're talking about.
Yeah. So first I would say is acknowledging that that is a fact. And what I mean by that is whether you want to take on the responsibility or not, that you are impacting how people will step off the mat, understanding that you will. Right. So first is acknowledging that, because some people want to go, well, no, I'm just a coach. And it's like, yes, but also you're in a position of power. So understanding with that power comes a certain level of respect that people will associate to you, but also weight that comes with all the words you say. Right. So if I see your actions and hear what you say, once again, because I respect you and I see that you're great in one area of your life, I am going to naturally sometimes try to emulate that in other areas of my life. And if it's positive, awesome. But unfortunately, if it's not, once again, I'll also do that. So first, I would say for coaches to take on that responsibility and acknowledge it, whether you want to or not, it is true. And then second, I would say is being intentional with our practice, right? Similar to skill development, where we need to be in, it's not just showing up and playing, right? Even if we're doing skill-based games or playing-based games, there's still an intentionality behind those games, right? So same thing with our coaching role. If I have a really, really hard practice, pointing out the fact that, hey, the goal of today, yes, is to push and become more resilient, but it's also to be able to tap into your insecurity of failure. It's being able to push through tiredness, not push through injury, but push through tiredness because you can still hit a second gear, right? Really being intentional and point it out to your athletes instead of just going, yeah, today we're just going to grind it out. I don't know what that means, right? But really being explicit and going, hey, today we're going to be pushing really hard because you're going to want to quit sometimes, just like when you're able to give a scenario outside of the mat. And someone goes, oh, yes, I'm in that scenario right now, or I'm dealing with that at work. So I think just being intentional and drawing and connecting the dots for our athletes and our students increases the likelihood that it will transfer. So I would say those are probably the two biggest things.
Yeah, 100%. And so then how do you relate that to kids? Because we see, I mean, sometimes it can be a little bit easier, I suppose, because kids are a little bit, you just bring it to their world, their language, their whole idea. And I think that I don't teach the adults, but I can see kids are a little bit easier to adapt to a situation than our adults. They like to have things a certain way. So how do you adapt that to kids specifically?
Honestly, I used to coach a lot of kids, but more so on the soccer side. It's actually the same exact thing.
Mhm.
So it's funny. We actually do the opposite. We tend to look at kids' classes and go, "Hey, I really want them to develop these skills beyond just these techniques," right? Because we understand it's bigger than just the techniques when it comes to kids. Generally speaking, coaches tend to understand that, right? Um, but then as they get older, we tend to not care about it as much because we're like, "Hey, they're adults; they should have it figured out by now."
Yeah.
So I tend to think that actually, as I said before, coaches tend to do, and I'm generalizing here, a better job at acknowledging of, hey, I'm going to be a role model to these kids. So they acknowledge that and they're proud of that. And then they're super patient and they demonstrate patience, right? And they demonstrate teamwork of, hey, working with your partner. And they demonstrate all these skills and they communicate to the students of like, hey, we're being patient because it's their turn. Or, hey, let's cheer them on and encourage each other, right? All these small things that we feel very comfortable explicitly telling to kids, we tend to not do it for adults. So I'll say honestly, for the kid side, it's doing exactly the same thing. And if anything, it's doubling it when it comes to the adults.
That is 100% true. I really had never thought about that in consideration to our adults, but yeah, 100%. You see it all the time. I mean, we kind of forget that adults also need probably more support, more praise, more, yeah, 100% doubling down.
Yeah, well, because think of the environment of jiu-jitsu, like it can be a very intimidating environment, whether someone was an athlete or not. It's still a very intimidating environment, unless they came from maybe like a grappling art, like a wrestling or another combat art, right? Which the majority of people are not. They're coming from other sports, if a sport at all. So, but once again, we tend to go, all right, well, they'll know how to just get along here. They don't need that additional encouragement. They don't need that additional patience. They don't need me to point out the fact that, hey, it's going to take a while, right? So we tend to be shorter with our direction or coaching, if you will, with adults than we are with kids. We tend to do a better job with kids. And then as they get older, we start removing those pieces because we think they don't need it anymore.
Yeah, we just assume that they have the skills and knowledge already.
Yeah.
Yes. Which, I mean, is the foundation of what we're doing in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu, really, is, yeah, developing those skills. You've just blown my mind already because it seems so obvious. And I'm sure people who are watching this are probably going to think that too because it feels so obvious. But it's not. It's just something that we take for granted for adults
Yes.
compared to what we do for our kids. Fantastic. Okay, so then my question is, we touched on this just a slight little bit then. How do you approach coaching and teaching with your students, whether that's adults or whether it's kids? Did you say you're not teaching kids now, but you
Yeah, so I
used
currently don't teach kids. I only teach adults, unless you count the college kids that I call kids, but they're technically adults.
yeah, which is
But
totally fine. So then
yeah,
how do you approach your coaching? What's the thoughts behind I suppose what I'm trying to say is, do you use games? Do you use CLA approach? Do you have a different methodology? Do you prefer a more traditional approach? Like, what do you find works for you?
yeah. So first I'll say I see teaching slash instructing different than coaching. There's an overlap, kind of like a Venn diagram, right? There's overlap in the center, but there's also explicit differences. So when I'm like teaching, instructing, right, like in a class or what have you, I'm giving very direct, explicit instruction of all the steps they need to take in order to accomplish the goal that I have set forth for them, right?
Yes.
And that's oftentimes what we see in jiu-jitsu coaching. Same thing is, I want you to accomplish this end position, so I'm going to give you every single step that you need to take in order to get there, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that's one way of coaching as well, but I would say that's more so instructing and teaching than it is coaching. While coaching is going, okay, let me actually understand where you are at, where do you want to go, right?
Mm-hmm.
And how can I guide you? And by guide you, it's more so giving you markers to reach, and then you're connecting those dots, if you will,
Mm-hmm.
right? I'm a very visual person, so hopefully that
I
creates a
love this.
visual
Yeah.
on there for, right? So obviously that's super popular right now with the popularity of the ecological approach or ecological dynamics and constraints-led approach, right? I saw you had like Greg on the podcast recently. So people are finally starting to understand, and Greg and I have exchanged messages and talked about it as the research for that goes back decades, but jiu-jitsu is finally coming along with it. But yeah, so we don't have to tell someone, hey, grab the wrists, grab this, do X, Y, Z. You can just tell them, hey, look to create a point of contact on your partner's arm. And they'll naturally tend to grab the wrist because that's the closest thing, right? Yeah. So in tonight's class, I literally just finished teaching class a little bit earlier. I think we had 6 new people because all the college students are back, right? And I was like, great, we're starting from stand-up. And they're like, oh my God, starting from stand-up, I don't know how to wrestle. It's like, okay, your goal is to establish 2 points of contact, one on the upper body or one on the wrist control and the other one on the head, let's just say. And your goal is to be able to tap your partner's knee. If they tap the knee, you have to go down and do a push-up, right? Something very simple. And then as we were going, people started doing down blocks, which is a wrestling technique. They started doing arm drags. They started doing snap downs. They started doing all these techniques without me having to go, okay, here's a snap down, here's a down block, here's X, Y, Z, right? Yeah. So by giving people kind of these, I don't even want to call them cues, but objectives, we will tend being the key word, to naturally gravitate towards techniques. With that being said, sometimes I will also show explicit techniques as well, right? So similar to research, there's value in quantitative research, which is purely numbers. So if I had to equate that to jiu-jitsu, that's the coach that goes, here's step 1, 2, 3, and 4. Yeah. But there's value also in qualitative research, which is, once again, the human component, right? Which would, I would say, if we had to draw a comparison, that's your ecological approach, right? Yeah. So my majority is doing qualitative research or qualitative ecological coaching with my students, with a little bit of quantitative or direct instruction, because someone asked for a technique or because I really need to break it down more and more and more, if you will, right? But the goal is, hey, let me have you naturally develop these techniques and also sprinkle in direct instruction to kind of streamline that development.
Yeah. So then fantastic. So then what kind of, for someone who is looking at doing both, so they're a coach at a gym and they love the idea of CLA, but they also want to keep doing direct instruction for some things, and they're finding themselves kind of like in a hybrid mode. Where do you find yourself with the direct instruction? At what point are you sort of in your class going, okay, I need to give direct instruction here, or I can see this isn't working, I'm going to stop this and give this direct cue? Are there any sort of aha moments throughout that you see regularly that you're like, okay, I know that I'm going to give this direct instruction, or this isn't working, I need to do this instead?
So I would say that's such a good question. All coaching, true coaching, is a practice, right? So if someone feels very comfortable, if let's say someone goes, hey, I love the idea of the constraints-led approach. I've been seeing videos. I've slowly started reading. I've been seeing clips and stuff on TikTok and what have you. I love the idea of it, but honestly, I don't know where to start. Yes, they can go and look at resources. There's a ton of free resources online right now with the amount of people who are now adopting it. What I would say is, let's say I'll use the example today. We're working on establishing chest-to-chest control from a partner seated and us standing. We're working on getting chest-to-chest control or chest-to-back control, right? And as they were going, I noticed that they kept bringing their feet in, which allowed their partner to establish lower body control, which then destroyed their base, right? Yeah. So yes, right there, I could go, okay, now let me show you a technique. But no, I slowed down and said, okay, well, here, let me give you one cue. Person on top, be mindful of this. Now go back at it. So instead of giving them the whole entire technique, you just give them just a part of the concept or technique, right? Yeah. Instead of going, hey, they failed, let me give them the whole entire thing. Yeah. You can give them part of it if you have a concern, right? Yeah. And so that's technically you're still playing with constraints, right? And let's say they still fail. They can go, all right, they've now addressed that part, but they're still making a mistake on this part. Now let me give them another cue, right? For me, and this is only for me personally, if I've given 2 or 3 cues and they're still not getting it, one, that means my cues are probably not that great. So that's when I may go, you know what, let's slow down class and let's work on a specific technique, right? Guess what? If we want to consider that a failure of you trying to adopt this new approach, welcome to practice. Because as much as your athletes are practicing, you are also practicing.
Yeah, right? I think I see this often where the idea of coaching, whether it's kids, whether it's adults, people panic when they feel like they don't know everything. I mean, you as a professor yourself, I assume you probably even use the same thing that I would use just teaching little kids at schools, where they could ask me a question and I would be like, I don't know. I don't
Yeah.
have the answer, but let's
Yep.
find out together. Let's try and figure
Exactly.
it out together, because you don't have to put yourself on a pedestal up here, and you don't have to feel like you know everything to be a good coach. I think it's the opposite. If you're willing to learn at the same level as your students, you're already being on a level that allows you to be reachable and approachable, and people respect that more
Yeah.
when they're
Well, and
able
that's
to
what I'm talking
ask
about.
you.
I say the same thing to my staff because I oversee employees as well. Um, they oftentimes, when we think of leaders not being able to ask questions, right, or say, I don't know, right? And it's like, no, for me, it's the complete opposite. As a leader, I ask as many questions as possible so that I can give the best answer, right? So if my student asks me about, let's say I don't play deep half, I play a little bit deep half, but they ask me a question about deep half and I'm not quite sure about, I'll go, great, let's explore that,
Mm,
right? And what do you feel in there, right? Are you feeling like their base is steady? Do you feel like they're here? Or feel like your hand's trapped? Let's explore it, right?
yeah,
And then I'm part of the exploration with them, right? Which
yeah,
then gives them more confidence, one, to ask me questions, but also to explore on their own, right? So they may not even come to you the next time they have a question. They may go, hey, I was trying this, I couldn't quite figure it out, so I explored here, right? And I got to this answer. And they may show you something where you're like, I haven't seen that before, right?
mm,
Or I never thought about it that way, right? So
yeah.
yeah, you have to be humble enough to,
To be okay with not having all the answers. I had
yeah,
I've been doing this thing in our kids' class recently where I've been just breaking them off into groups, just being like, okay, groups of 3, groups of 4, whatever it is. And I just want you guys to talk to each other. There's not even any resistance. Just talk to each other, figure out how to do like a particular thing. And it's usually a submission. And I wanted them to work on, yesterday, it was an armbar from side control, but they weren't allowed to go to mount to get it. So I literally just was like, you're not allowed to go to mount, but I want you to just see what you can do. The
yeah.
things that they came up with, I was expecting them to figure out how to just like lift. I did give them the cue, try and consider bringing one shoulder off the mats. I was like, just think
Yeah.
about how you can get one shoulder off the mats. Try and explore that. They came up with the weirdest stuff, but it worked because
Yep.
they knew that all they had to do was put something behind the elbow. So they were trying to work out, how could I put something behind the elbow to get the person to tap from this armbar? They had things like locking a triangle kind of thing, but then trapping the person's head. They had all
Oh,
sorts of things. None of them did the one that I thought that they were going to do. But I think that that's the beauty of peer-led learning, is that if
yes.
I was to sit and give you the direct instruction of, I want you to do this, they would never have emerged any of that. And some of it would be more successful than others. But I'm not to
Yes.
tell
Yeah.
them that it's wrong, because what they did, they applied the invariants, they applied the things that they know never change. And they were like, well, if I just do this and bend this person's elbow over my arm, over my leg, they're going to tap because it's going to hurt. And I was like, well, you're not wrong. So I think it's it was very interesting. So I think it's like a balance between, yeah, that direct instruction, but you don't, yeah, necessarily have to. And at the end, I was like, oh, also, this is another way that you could have done it, just to show them, like,
Yeah.
and then they were like, that was probably the easiest option. I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, probably,
Well,
but
it's like, yeah, there's, and that's ultimately when it comes to kids, but then also, and I like drawing the connection for adults because once again, we tend to just like, oh, I remember when I was a kid, but now I'm an adult. And it's like, no, we're very much the same. We're very similar. We're still learning how to walk, but now in this new area, right?
mm,
Um, but the idea, oh, I just lost my train of thought.
okay.
The cons of how my brain works.
Mine too, don't worry.
I'm like, it just like went off into somewhere.
Mine just goes in so many different places that I
Yeah,
can't keep up with my own thoughts half the time. It's shocking,
yeah.
honestly.
But that's nothing that good. I'll remember it randomly. But
That's
yes,
it.
I struggle. Have them explore.
Yeah, 100%. And see, now I've just done it too.
Oh,
So
okay, I got it for you. Yeah,
go.
so I'd say the big thing is, so you oftentimes hear like the emergence of skill. Like for me, it's the time piece. Like what is there? what is our, I guess, goal, right? So what I mean by that is, are we going, hey, I need you to understand this technique by the end of today, right? Because another part when it comes to coaching, and especially at the highest level, so while I do coach martial arts, I've also been fortunate enough to work with some of the top European soccer clubs in the world over the past 10 years. They are preparing for specific games. So they need to make sure that their training and their development is reaching peak by the time of their game, right? So that's all training is around. It's like, okay, how do I make sure that I'm peaking or having this skill as refined as possible, whatever that may mean, by the time my game is coming, right? So when we're working with kids or someone who's competing or playing or practicing jiu-jitsu recreationally, there's not a time constraint of, hey, they need to have half guard locked down by X date, right? So there's no urgency for them to not be able to explore, right? Compared to, hey, if you have an athlete working or having to compete against a leg locker this Saturday, yeah, there may be some very specific things that's going to go, hey, let's actually pinpoint this. And I want to be really refined here of you understanding this while also learning the general concepts, right? So for me, that's another component that's kind of missing in today's conversation of quote unquote, which one is better. And it's like, well, it depends on the athlete and the time and the place, but is when do we need this to emerge? If it's for the majority of all practitioners, there is no time constraint, so we can play and explore. But if it's a matter of, hey, this person has to be dialed in on this, like, for example, once again, if you look at UFC fighters when they're getting ready to fight specialists, guess what? They are drilling that very specific thing, right? And then work also conceptually around it, right? It's a little bit of and, not either or.
Definitely. Okay, so then to touch on the idea of, say, we spoke about like soccer games or football games or UFC athletes or whatever it is. Now let's bring that. This is something that I love finding out from people at the moment, is all about the idea of competition and athletes as kids. How do you feel about this?
And what's, as a true professor, in what context?
Okay, let's do it in two contexts. Let's do two. Let's get specific. Okay, so let's do the first one is a kid who is looking at just doing a local competition. Local comp kid looking to just have that experience and compete. Then let's look at the child who is now homeschooled and they are training 4 to 6 hours a day jiu-jitsu and they love it. Don't get me wrong, they love it. But it has now become everything. And they're around the age of, let's say 7 or 8. Let's go 8 because they're a little bit more developed at 8. Let's go 8.
Yeah. All right. So in regards to the preparation for competition for both of them? Yeah. So I would consider both of them recreational because they're kids. Like, I don't believe in elite youth athletes. I think that's a contradiction of a statement. I have a very like skewed view of athletes when it comes to youth athletes. So honestly, I'm treating them almost exactly the same with some subtle differences. And the main differences is honestly the parents.
Yes.
So for the recreational student, the recreational kid, my main thing is them being comfortable with people watching them and giving them instruction while they're live rolling. That is my main thing is, hey, you being able, and when I say instructions, I'm barely giving them instructions if they're like 7 years old, right? Which is kind of the opposite of what many people think. It's like, oh no, you need to tell them everything they need to do. It's like, for kids, like I'm trying to give them the least amount of instruction as possible while they're out there. So for the recreational kid, it's really just them getting used to hearing my voice, them having, when I say a plan, I cannot mean that any more loosely. I just mean, hey, you're going to go out there and you're going to slap hands with the person and bump fists. Let's literally practice that 5 times. So they get the jitters of I'm out there and everyone's watching me.
Yeah.
Right. And then let's just go through a match. We're going to start standing. What are we going to do when you stand? What do you like to do? Right. And we're going to play through an entire match. Right?
Yeah.
We're playing through matches. Right.
Yeah.
Because for me, once again, it's not, I'm almost treating it like a training session with someone you don't know. It's not even
Yeah.
like a competition is how I'm viewing that for that kid.
Yeah.
Then for the more competitive youth athlete, honestly, it's the same exact thing, but it's more so managing the expectations of the parents,
Yeah.
right? So I'm able to pair them up with obviously a little bit more competitive students, right? But we're still playing through their entire match because what I want them to do is once they get out there, they've been there before. So oftentimes we'll talk about, hey, we want to practice. We're going to practice this way so that when you go out there, it's easier, right? But then we actually don't take our athletes through a match,
Mm.
right? Okay, you're going to be sitting here waiting for this roll, right? And then you're going to go out there. I want you to slap hands with your partner. And then we're going to start. I'm going to be coaching you through this, right? And then what are you looking for? I want to look for this, right? Go for this on your partner. And your partner's almost being alive like their kids. So they're just going to go with each other, right? And you get to see what they naturally do. For the competitive student, they're going to do the same exact things. For me, once again, I've never had an issue with the youth athletes, even when I was coaching high school back in the day. It was more so managing the expectations of the parents because a basic fact that people, and the reason why I have such a strong view about elite student athletes, elite youth athletes is because prior to any youth athlete going through puberty, you have no idea where they'll end up.
Mm.
And people just literally always forget about that, right? The
Yeah.
number of top level and I'll use American football, 5-star recruits at 8th grade, right? Which means they're 13 years old, who then disappear because they only grew another 2 inches and they're 5'4".
Yeah.
Right? So that's why for me,
Yeah.
my main thing is when it comes to youth athletes, I'm taking them through the long-term athlete development model, which is if you've never participated in sport, my first thing is just getting you started.
Mm.
Let's just get involved in the sport. Now that you're involved in the sport, let's get you learning about balance. Let's start getting you working on stability and base, right? And momentum and angles when it comes to jiu-jitsu. Now
Yes.
that you've started and now that you've learned how to move your body and potentially move, now let's actually start learning about the sport itself, right? That's now we're learning side control and the positions, right? So when it comes to youth athletes, it's going great. Let's just get them started. Let's just get them on the mat. Then let's get them playing games that are just getting their bodies moving and them learning how to move their bodies. Then let's get them working with each other on how to move each other's bodies or how do I move my body when someone's connected to it. And then they may get into, okay, now let's start working how to practice.
Yeah.
Right? How do we practice these techniques, right? And that'll be our constraints-led approach, our direct coaching, if that's what you're choosing to do.
Yeah.
And so for me, kids stay in those 4 phases. We're not even getting really into, hey, we're training to compete and win until they're a
Yeah.
little bit old.
Yeah. And sort of at what age, I mean, we talked about sort of puberty. At what point do you then consider, okay, this is a decision that they're making, that this is what they want to do, and it's not necessarily a parent so much influence? At what age do you then start to take that seriously with them?
It's going to seem like such a conservative answer. Psychologically speaking, it's 12 to 14.
Yes.
It's 12 to 14, right?
Yeah.
Obviously, some kids show progress a lot earlier, which great. If they love playing their sport, keep having them play their sport. They shouldn't be doing it year round. Like research is very clear on that. They shouldn't be doing it year round, even if they absolutely love it. Get them involved in other sports activities, arts, and what have you. But 12 to 14, that's when it's going, okay, you're really sticking with this. Once again, we're still not doing it year round, but now we can really start focusing on your development and seeing how their body starts growing and changing during that time. Because that's not only psychologically, but also socially that starts playing into, right? My social circle starts a higher influence as well, whether I'm going to be staying my sport or not. And then obviously as they start progressing through puberty, that will also dictate of, hey, I just can't compete anymore because I'm undersized or whatever the factors may be.
So then do you think, like I'm obviously in Australia, so the whole sporting thing is very different here to what it is in America with football, and you guys have so many more cool sports than we have. But that's okay. But what I was trying to say is, goodness me, now I've lost it. Sorry.
Oh, you're okay.
What was I going to ask you? That's what I was going to say. When we say psychologically speaking, for someone who doesn't understand anything about child development or how the brain develops, or anything like that. What do you mean by that, psychologically speaking,
Great question. So
within that age group?
yes, within that age group. So at that point, and I'm going to kind of start from earlier to later. So by that point, you understand that other people have different experiences than you. So that's a big piece, which is, right, if they win, I lost, I'm unhappy, right? You now understand like, hey, some people are going to win, some people are going to lose. You understand that fairness, you gain a better understanding of fairness, right? So not only do we have different experiences, but I also understand that things may not always be quote unquote fair, right?
Mm-hmm.
I also understand that I have some level of responsibility in the outcome, right? Once again, kids at younger age, they'll lose and like, well, you were sitting there picking the dandelions during the soccer game, the football match. That's why you go off, right? So you understand like why I won, why I lost. You are also in a better place to be able to actually train and understand what progress looks like, right? So I can actually understand that I'm progressing.
Mm-hmm.
So between, hey, I understand that other people have different experiences than I am. I'm able to understand that some people win, some people lose. I'm able to understand that quote unquote things aren't always fair. I'm able to understand that I need to put in work at some level in order to somewhat get some of the outcomes that I want. That's for me, those kind of big five or four are the things where it's like, hey, now we're in a place where you can somewhat handle being able to be a little bit more competitive, right? Because you understand, hey, you're going to have to do things that you may not like in order to win or to succeed or to progress in the way that you want to move forward. Also, goal setting. They tend to be a little bit better at long-term. When I say long-term goals at that age, we're still talking like 3 months, 6 months at the most. That's like long-term. So they're able to look further in the future a little bit, right? Because I'm sure you may or may not have seen the studies of kids who are like 3 or 4 years old and they'll put like marshmallows in front of them and they're like, all right, don't
Oh,
test the marshmallows. They'll like leave the room and the kids last like 30 seconds, right? And the ones who are
straight.
able to, right, delayed gratification has been linked to other successes in life, right? So they have
Yeah.
a better understanding of like delayed gratification or me putting in the work and I'll achieve my goals later in the future, right? So that's what I mean psychologically, because putting all those pressures that we just mentioned on someone who's 6 years old, once again, that things aren't fair. Some people are better than you. You may even work hard and once again still lose. That you're not in control of every factor. That you're putting in, you're going to be unhappy now, so you can be happy later. They don't understand that. All I understand right now is that you don't like
Yeah.
because you're yelling,
Because you're
right,
yelling.
or
Yeah.
because you're pushing, or because what have you. So that's what I mean psychologically. Is those kind of mile markers that we tend to hit at the different ages.
And I probably have the numbers wrong or something like this because I'm not in America myself. But the study of that saying 70% of people or students, young people quit their sport by the age of 13.
Yeah.
So how do you see that? Is that happening as much as you think that it is? And what do you think is causing this or isn't causing this?
Yeah, so yeah, it's depending on the study, but I think the most I've seen was like 70 to 80%. But yeah, that's it's around there. So I think a number of factors. One, generational differences, right? So we know that the current generation is also um, not participating in the same activities that the previous generations were, which includes sports, right? Um, so that's one piece, right? Just generational differences. Right? Another piece is athlete burnout, right? That is definitely a factor, right? So athletes, especially as parents are having athletes specialize at an early age. We know that early specialization being participating in one single sport and not participating in any other sports, that has a direct correlational link to higher rates of burnout, which ultimately leads to them dropping out of their sport. So between the current generation being interested in other activities, rise of social media, and alternative activities for that matter, a higher specialization rate amongst youth athletes, which then once again, higher burnout rate. And then also the cost of sports, right? As sports continues to become more popular, the cost to participate in sports is also going up. I know a number of people who've come from overseas who that's one of the number one things they point out is it cost me $3,000 for my one child to play soccer. It's not even like at a competitive level, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, there's a number of factors. I like to think of it more of a pie chart that are all contributing um, to that like high uh, uh, like leaving rate, if you will.
Yeah. Do you think that I notice it a bit, and I don't have the answers, but you might. So I notice quite a bit that children, I say children, but they're not really children at this age, around 14, 15, are much harder to engage in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. Now, in Australia, we don't really have wrestling. So we do. It's not at schools, it's not that popular.
Yeah,
Very much rugby and sort of football is the sort of the number one sport. So we have cricket as well, but no one really likes cricket. We like cricket. We like cricket. Um, but in terms of sort of the skill that kind of translates over, rugby is the closest that we really have
yeah,
in Australia because we don't really, even judo is not really that big. So I would be interested to know. I have a hard time, not so much now. Now I've got a group that's pretty solid. And once
yeah,
you have a little group that's there, then people tend to see other kids their age and they're more willing to engage
correct.
and build
Yes.
a community. But for someone who is struggling with this age group, do you think it's just a peer led experience? Like, I know that because Jiu Jitsu isn't as popular in Australia as rugby, kids go to school and it's like, I do Jiu Jitsu, and they're like, that's
What does it?
weird.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
that's weird. Do you think it is a peer thing? Do you think it's just a developmental thing where it's kind of like they're just not wanting to engage in these kinds of sports? Again,
Mhm.
pie chart. I'm imagining it probably is a pie chart again.
Yeah. Well, that's why I say that because I think I made a post recently, or maybe it was just a story of like, I wish I had the confidence of certain influencers who would just make these bold statements. And like, as researchers, I'm like, well, kind of, it depends on this, which sounds so unsure to people, or well, it's
Yeah.
multiple factors. It's like, no, I just want the 100% it's this. Um, but yeah, you know that between 12 and 16, or 11 to 16, if you will, that's when we are most influenced by our social circles, right?
Mm.
So what is the most popular thing, right? I'm tending to gravitate towards that, right? So that's definitely a factor. Also, access, right? So I know certain communities is like, hey, the nearest jiu-jitsu gym or even martial arts gym is an hour away, right? Or 45
Yeah.
minutes away. So I may not even know anyone who's participated in this. If I know someone who's participated in it, that increases the likelihood that I'll be exposed to it, and exposure leads to expansion, right? And the more I exposed to it, the more it expands my mind of what are the opportunities that may be out there in the world. Right?
Mm.
So that's at that age group, that's probably one of the biggest factors is what is popular. And I don't just mean that in a superficial way. I mean, what's popular in the sense of I have access to it, I'm aware of it, and also people that I know are participating in it. So those three components of when I say popularity, not just the superficial thing, but I'm aware, I have access, and people I know are participating with it. So now I have a entry point that I feel comfortable broaching that with. I'd say like those are the three biggest things for that age group, at least.
So then do you see, um, again, please correct me if I'm wrong here. Wrestling is incorporated in schools throughout America, yes?
For the most part, yes.
For the
For the
most part.
most,
Yeah.
yeah. If they have the space, then they tend to have it.
Do you ever see Brazilian Jiu Jitsu being able to make its way into that mainstream kind of arena within schools?
100% yes.
Yes. Cool.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
How do
You
you
already
think?
see you see certain colleges already have it. Certain
Yep.
universities already do have it as a program. Most of the time. So speaking of American sports and how weird it is here. So we have interscholastic sports, which are sports within K through 12. So kindergarten through 12th grade or primary school. Right.
Mm.
Then you also have outside of the schools, you have clubs.
Yeah.
Right. So I'm a part of a club, wrestling team or club, football team or what have you. Right. And then you obviously have private businesses, right? So that'd be your local jiu-jitsu gym or what have you. And then any recreational place that may offer this. So those are kind of like your four for young adults or for youth, if you will. At
Mm.
the once you become an adult, you have colleges and universities. So that's your varsity athletics, that's your college football, basketball, the giant multi-billion-dollar NCAA industry, if you will. Don't get me started. I can have a whole rant on that. And then once again, you will have some local clubs potentially, but for the jiu-jitsu space, that's primarily like privately owned schools that are once again privately owned businesses.
Mm.
and then that's it, right? And then obviously professional, I think, or be professional depending on the sport. Um, so yeah, so there's a handful of different avenues someone can pursue when it comes to sports, if you will. So kind of depends
Mm.
what we're talking about.
I would be really interested to know how it would look or how it does look. Like, do you have Brazilian Jiu Jitsu at the It's the University of Rhode Island, isn't it?
Yes, so we have it as a club sport. So at colleges and universities, generally speaking, you have open recreation, which is just, hey, show up and play,
Hmm.
right? And if you have a martial arts studio at your school, they may allow for drop-in open recreational wrestling or jiu-jitsu, for example. That's how it was at UCLA, at University of
Mm.
California, Los Angeles. Then right above recreational, where it's just, hey, everyone come play, is intramural sports. Intramural
Hmm.
sports is, hey, you're going to join a team, right, with you and your friends, and you're going to compete in a league that we set up for you. But once again, it's just you and your friends going against other people and their friends in this league.
Yeah.
Above that is then club sports. So club sports is where jiu-jitsu currently lives at the vast majority of all universities if they do have Brazilian jiu-jitsu. It is a club team, so you technically represent your university, right? But because there's not like a large governing body specifically for that, you're usually either just going to your normal tournaments, your IBJJF tournaments, or what have you, but then you're representing your school,
Mm.
right? And the difference between club sports and varsity athletics, the biggest difference is funding. Club
Yeah.
sports are funded by the athletes themselves, their coaches, donors, alumni, while varsity athletics is funded by the university itself, right? As well as a number of resources, donors, alumni, and so on, right?
Mm.
So currently, Jiu-Jitsu lives at the club sports level where you can represent the University of California, Los Angeles, or UC, or University of Rhode Island, or a number of other institutions, but you're still just competing in the same uh, tournaments that any other private school would be competing in, compared to if it were to get to the level where, hey, University of California, Los Angeles is going against University of Florida
Yeah.
at a meet, right? So
At
I
that
can
level.
see getting to that at one point, and there are strides to get there.
So what do you think is the gap then? Is it just the popularity? Is it just the growth of it? Yeah.
Yes, yes. So two things. One, it's space. So colleges and universities across the country, that's one of the biggest resources lacking is space, and then staffing, and then
Mhm.
financial. Those are the top three resource deficits across universities across the country. So space, staffing, and then obviously financial support. So even if there is interest, do we have the space anywhere on our campus, which will likely be in recreation, to mark off for just a giant open mat?
Mm.
That's a lot of real estate when, hey,
Well,
we
let's
have,
say.
yeah, right. So first you have to have the space to be able to even do that.
Yeah.
And then if you do have the space, you then have to have obviously the interest, right? So if you have the space and then you have the interest, then you're able to petition to become a club sport. So that's how it is at most institutions. If there's interest, you can go, hey, we have 15 plus students who are interested in starting this club. You can petition for it. And if they have the space and you can show interest, then you can likely become a club and then kind of move forward from there.
How interesting. I find it so fascinating just from my own completely different world, I suppose,
Yeah.
completely different backgrounds of how our education systems work. And, even the idea of scholarships and funding for these particular things
Yeah.
works as a system in America compared to here. We don't really see this at all. So I'd love to see how it could progress here in particular, to be able to get to the point where scholarships and things like that were actually available for people to go and train anything really. I think I'm not going to go out on a limb and say things that I don't know, but it's just not built, the system is not built the same way. And I'd really love to see sports more readily incorporated into universities in Australia as well. Um,
Yeah.
for those that are looking to pursue those backgrounds.
Well, and that's the thing, because here there needs to be interest, right? And the students push the interest. So if students really wanted to, like here, there's something called referendums, where, and it's oftentimes it's used for like facilities or spaces, which is, hey, we as the student body really want this resource, and we are willing to take on an additional fee in order to get this resource.
Mm.
right? So if I were to send you like links and pictures of some of the facilities that get built, and you're like, oh my God, that's $155 million facility. And it's like, yeah, the students chose to take on a self-tax. So we're going to include a $75 fee per 6-month time span or semester in order to get this facility.
Yeah.
And then you end up like a 30-year mortgage for that facility, and then it gets paid off, and then you have this giant facility. So that is something that could be done is, hey, we, the students, we are willing to charge ourselves $15 per term or semester in order to get or retrofit this space with mats, for example, or to raise money for these mats. And then where can we put it? Then becomes the next question and challenge.
Yeah. I feel like I have so many questions for you, but my brain is going in so many different places. I don't even know which questions that I want to keep asking you because I feel like, okay, let's go back just a little bit here. I got slightly distracted with the American sporting for my own benefit more than anything. For anyone who already knows this, I'm really sorry. For me, it's very interesting. I'd like to know, and I put out something a little while ago, and you commented on it and provided some really valuable insight for me on hierarchy of needs and how this impacts how we are pretty much able to do anything really. But let's talk about jiu-jitsu.
Okay.
How do you see for those that don't know, like a hierarchy of needs, it's kind of like just what you need to be able to achieve something at a level, but with your foundational, absolute core foundational things met, like your food, your water, your shelter, that kind of thing. How do you see coaches in the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu space able to meet the needs of their students when things are only within our control? We can't feed our kids. We can't get to the start of class and be like, all right, guys, did you all have lunch today? Let's all sit down and have a sandwich. That's not realistic. But how do we then just be able to build even just, I think, recognizing and understanding that can play such a big role in a child's everything. I had a child the other day cry for 20 minutes and didn't want to do the class, and it's because they wanted a biscuit because they were hungry. And I was like, oh, look, just let them eat the biscuit. And the parents were like, no, they need to get on the mats. And I was like, no, they really just need to eat the biscuit. It's totally fine. Go and eat the biscuit. But, sorry, I got a bit distracted there. But I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you have any tips or advice for coaches to be able to recognize what is within their control and how to layer it to then get to the point where they can learn? I suppose it's before the learning even begins.
So you just asked a question that like the whole entire American education system is trying to tackle. So if we find the answer here, we'll solve any issues. Yes, you're correct.
We'll let them know.
Yeah, if our basic needs are not met, it is very hard to excel in life. Doesn't mean it's impossible, but very hard. And then that is doubled or tripled when we talk about youth. Right? It's very hard to pay attention to class, albeit jiu-jitsu or more traditional classroom, if I haven't eaten, if I haven't slept, if I don't feel safe, or I don't have shelter slash a home, right? So yes, acknowledging, and that's once again, I feel like much of this will go back to those two primary factors: acknowledging our role, right? And there's something called our circle of control and our circle of concern, right? Yeah. So the inner circle is our circle of control. These are the things I can actually control, right? So that is, hey, I know that there's traffic. I can't control the traffic, but I can control what time I leave, right? Yeah. So those are things within your control. The things that are your concern, right, are the larger circle. The inner circle will unfortunately never be able to touch that outer circle, no matter what you do in your life. Right? We can do as much as possible, right? I've almost died back in 2022 completely randomly of a random like stomach issue. I eat healthy, like at that time, didn't drink, don't do drugs, eat healthy, work out every single day, and still almost died on a random Thursday, right? Yeah. So as much as we can control, it will never touch everything that we may be concerned of, right? So same thing when it comes to coaching people in general, but particularly youth, right? Is understand that I have this role and I acknowledge the impact of my role and how significant it is, but also understand that I may not be able to control every aspect of this kid's life, such as a parent that seems like they may be mistreating this child. Right? I might be able to, once again, take steps, albeit talking to the child, potentially if it's really extreme, bringing in professionals. With that being said, that does not mean I'll be able to literally potentially take that kid out of that home, right? In most extreme cases, right? So for me, if I'm giving advice for coaches, my biggest thing is actually have a connection with your student and their support systems, whoever that may be, right? So it shouldn't be a place where parents, guardians, or whoever come drop off their kids and they have no communication or contact with you, right? So I see it as when you're inviting a student into your space, your class, you're inviting their whole entire family or their immediate family also into that space, right? And there has to be an alignment of values. Right? And if there's not, that's when the issues may come, right? So once again, the kid comes in and goes, oh, I'm hungry. That's why they weren't able to focus. And maybe I had to pull them to the side, what have you. Okay, right. I may go, oh yeah, they're kind of distracted today. Did they skip lunch today? But if it starts becoming a trend, I may go, okay, now we need to have an actual conversation.
Yeah.
Right. So I think that's something that often people are afraid of, is having those kind of uncomfortable conversations, but applying it again, once again, what we applied to jiu-jitsu, applying it to the rest of life. We talk about in jiu-jitsu how we are becoming comfortable with being uncomfortable, right? If you've ever had someone really heavy in side control, that's not comfortable, but over time, become more comfortable with it, right? So applying that same exact thing outside of the mat of, hey, this is a situation that's very uncomfortable, but I need to address it, because if I don't address it, I'll get metaphorically smashed in this position, right?
Yeah.
So if I notice there's an issue with the child, I have to talk to their parents or guardians. That can't just be a, hey, that's not my role, I'm going to overstep, because actually it's impacting, which is to look after this child.
Yeah. So I would like to know then, when we talk about we invite the whole family in and we have that connection, I think it's so important to be able to know the parents' names just as much as you know the children's names, and addressing them by their names, because the kids see that too. The kids see you being like, hey, Jarell, how are you going today? Like, it becomes that thing where you build that connection with them.
Yes.
But I also see the side where coaches are continuously frustrated because of the parents. So then you see this thing where it's like parents are not allowed in the training room. Maybe they have CCTV footage. Maybe they're asked to sign an agreement. I don't have these things. I wouldn't mind the CCTV if I could. If I had the space for it, I think it would probably be really quite helpful. But I've also been able to set the expectation with my parents and those boundaries where they don't overstep. And there's always one or two new ones that come in and they'll start talking on the mats, and all I really need to do is turn around and just be like, and they know.
Exactly.
That's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, how do you find that with the balance of setting the expectation for parents? Do you like the idea of parents being in the training room? Would you prefer them not to be in your training room? And then if they're not in your training room, how do you still create a sense of community for them?
Yeah. So when I'll talk about twofold, and I'm going to apply this back to when I was like coaching youth soccer, right? Because those students, they were in high school, so everywhere from 14 years old to 17 years old, or 13 to 17 years old. So I'd still say they're still youth athletes, right? So their parents, it was right after school, so their parents weren't there. They weren't at practice. Not because they weren't allowed, but it's just because they're usually at work. And if they were there, I would always acknowledge them, right? Either, especially after, once again, if you have an assistant coach or someone that's helping you rally the kids, right? Being able to greet them as they're coming in, that's a big thing. Making sure that they show up on time, so you actually have that time to check in with them, right? Because I also think that's good, right? So let's say class starts at 6 p.m. or let's say 5:30 for a youth class, right? Great. Like once they bring in their kid, the kid can go hop on the mat. Class doesn't start for another like 5-10 minutes. I can talk to them and greet each parent that they're seeing how their kid's doing. Even it doesn't take long. Like, hey, how's their day been? Oh, they had a rough day at school. Okay, let me prepare that they may be a little antsy today, right? But even just those small check-ins, right, I think is important. Then in regards to establishing boundaries, there's a big difference between boundaries and walls, right? Walls stops people from coming in. Boundaries establishes how far people can come, right? That applies not only as professionals, but as just people, right? In relationships, albeit professional, even romantic relationships, right? There's a difference between having a wall and a boundary, right? So being comfortable upholding your boundaries, right, is not the same as upholding a wall, because a wall is stop, right, which makes parents go, what? Like, you're trying to keep me away from my kid, or makes it combative. Compared to, hey, when we have class, I'm gonna ask that you don't distract the kids by talking to them. If there's anything that you need them, like, just like flag me down, like go like this, right? Like, give them something to work with, right? So that's me establishing a boundary. But once again, I'm being very explicit and clear with it. Oftentimes, we have boundaries, but we don't communicate it to people. And then when they cross it, we're upset, right? Once again, professionally, personally, romantically, jiu-jitsu as well, right? So instead of waiting for the parent to, I don't know, step on the mat or be coaching them from the side, right? As soon as a new parent is signing their kid up, I'm letting them know, hey, so when you drop off your kid, allow them to go onto the mat by themselves. Just make sure they're not wearing their Crocs. Most Crocs here. Then they'll get started. It's okay if they're running around, because we'll corral them. And then you can take a seat over here. Just remember, we don't allow coaching during the class. If you have any questions, literally just flag me down in between our breaks, because we'll make sure we take breaks, because also kids can't do something for 30 minutes straight, right? So there will be times for you to kind of like check in with the parents kind of quickly to go, oh, okay, I'll come check with you in 5 minutes. So that'd probably be my biggest thing, is establishing your boundaries, but then make sure that you're explicitly clear in communicating your boundaries before people even cross them. Because otherwise, that's not fair to them.
That is perfect. The fact that the wall and the boundary thing, I think, is so, so valuable, because I think that it's something that we're not all emotionally intelligent, and we're not all on the same level. And, you know, when you're running a business like a Brazilian Jiu Jitsu academy or something, you don't necessarily have the skills. Like, you're running a business, you're learning as you go. You might be a black belt, you might be really great at business. You can have all of these skills, but it doesn't necessarily mean that you have the ability to communicate. So that 100%, that idea of being able to set the boundary without setting up a wall, I think is very valuable for coaches. That was beautifully put. Yeah.
Good. Yeah, I tend to give a lot of connect a lot of things to like relationship and life. Once again, the transfer, right? So that applies once again in life. Is once again, so many of our issues, concerns, personal, relational, tends to come from either one of two places, at least from my perspective. Either we're all using the same words and we have different definitions, right? So I say something, you say something, and then we're mismatching, so we get upset at each other. Or once again, boundaries or expectations that are not met, that were never communicated.
Yeah.
Right. We just make the assumption.
It made me think, completely unrelated to jiu-jitsu, but my partner is Brazilian. And when we first started dating, he spoke English well, don't get me wrong, but it wasn't probably as fluent as it is now, sort of 5-6 years later. And he sent me off to the shop to go and buy, he called it dental cream, toothpaste. I don't know what you call it in America, but he sent me for dental cream. And I was like, okay, no worries. Came back, gave him his dental cream, and he's like, what the hell is this? I was like, it's toothpaste. And he's like, no, that's not toothpaste. And I was like, okay, clearly we've had a misunderstanding in communication here. What are you trying to ask me for? And he's like, you know, the thing that you brush with. And I was like, oh, okay. You wanted a toothbrush. But things like that, I think that it's a very simple sort of thing that happens. But it's so easy for that to happen on the mats too. Like,
exactly, yes.
If you don't have the same level of understanding of what something is, and one little bit of communication gets misconstrued or misunderstood, I think that's when we end up with more issues with parents than not. Because parents naturally are going to be very protective of their children. That it's their kids. It's their whole world. And we are putting them in weird places and unnatural positions and doing things with them that, if you don't understand what that is as a parent on the side, if you've never trained anything yourself, you're probably looking at it going, what's going on here? Or
they're very uncomfortable, or they may even cry.
Yeah.
Right? How do you do that, right? Or how do you handle that? So yes, yeah.
Yeah. So how do you deal with the crying? I'd love to know.
That's why I don't teach kids anymore. Well, I do. My employees cry, so it's the same thing. So create a safe space that they feel comfortable enough to cry and bring their concerns to me. That's my number one thing.
Yeah.
I literally have a box of tissue at a desk in my office, And every time I have a new employee, they're like, why is that there? I was like, those people tend to cry in my office. They're like, I'll never cry. And then sooner or later, they either get overwhelmed or someone's mean, and then they end up crying. And it's like, oh, see, that's why the boss teaches there. So on. So but I don't deal with kids crying as much anymore. But yeah, so once again, for me, it's just once again, for me, it's more important to create a space that they feel comfortable communicating why they're
Yeah.
than it is to here. I'm going to add one piece to that. I want to create a space that is safe, right, where we can explore discomfort while obviously making sure that we don't get injured. Period. That's the foundation. And then building on that foundation that's already set, create a space that they feel comfortable enough to communicate why they're crying, right? Knowing that they're not injured, right? Being able to feel comfortable that, hey, why are you being comfortable communicating that to me? That's what I care most about once that foundation has been set, right? If they cry and they have to run off the mat and they don't feel like they can communicate that to me or their partner, right? There's a disconnect because at some point they're going to have to be able to communicate to the person who's directly impacting them of, hey, you're hurting me, or hey, this does not feel good, and I need to be able to communicate that, right? Yeah. That's a good thing for them to learn in a physical sport, but also just in life of, hey, be able to go to communicate to the person directly hurting you, albeit physically or emotionally, and be able to communicate that. So I didn't like how you said that to me, so it made me feel sad. Oh, okay, like, I'm sorry, I just meant it this, or I was just kidding with you. I didn't mean it, right? Or to their partner had their elbow digging into their thigh and they didn't like it, but they just didn't feel comfortable saying it, so they ran off the mat, right? It's going, okay, how do we get it to a place where they feel comfortable communicating it to the person who's directly impacting them, right? And once again, I hope for my adults to be able to do the same thing.
Yeah, definitely. I actually sometimes think it's easier for kids to communicate that than it is for the adults. And that's sometimes when, I don't teach, but I definitely run the place in terms of many adults coming to complain about things that very much could have been resolved if they felt comfortable to just say something in the first place. And knowing that all of our members of no one intentionally is looking to hurt someone, whether it be emotionally, whether it be physically, or put them in a place where they feel unsafe or vulnerable or whatever it is. But I think if we, like you've said, being able to communicate that, it's going to solve a whole lot of issues.
Yeah. Well, and like focusing particularly for like adults for a second, it's like, one, jiu-jitsu is a very vulnerable thing.
Yeah.
So in and itself, it's already something that's very raw and once again vulnerable. Right? Then we add on any stressors, pressures, or weights that we're carrying from off the mat. We're bringing that onto the mat as well. And now add the frustration of not getting a technique or being tapped or having the coach kind of push you a little bit on the day that you don't want to be pushed. All these additional factors then get added up. Right. So yeah, that's as you kind of perfectly said. Kids sometimes tend to be better, like, "Ow, you're hurting me." They let the person know, while adults sometimes won't, and they'll just turn up the intensity.
Yeah.
Right. Or slap the mat and like just walk off. Like, I need a minute. It's like, okay, like there seems to be like more here. Right. But either way, once again, creating that space where they can either go, "Hey, I just need to take a minute," before even reaches there. That's the goal.
Yeah, 100%. I could keep you all day, Jarell. I really am enjoying talking to you, but we probably should get on with our days a little bit. I'm assuming, what time is it there now?
Oh, I don't even know. It's probably like 9:25.
9:25. Probably time for you to head home at some point today.
I could do one or two more questions.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess, okay, last one. If you could instill any wisdom, I suppose, any knowledge to a coach that is struggling with their kids' program, not because that they're not a talented Brazilian Jiu Jitsu athlete, like whatever it is, but they're struggling because of the emotional toll that it's taking on them personally, in terms of they're feeling burnt out from coaching, or they're feeling burnt out from kids, or even adults. They're burnt out from having a gym. What is one thing? I know there's probably three completely different aspects there, but what is one thing that you would share with them to be able to manage these big things? Probably coming more from your psychology side here.
And that's a big one, because as someone's truly experiencing burnout, like true burnout, they kind of need to like take time to themselves. True action. So sometimes people think they're experiencing burnout. It's like you're experiencing. So I'm gonna just explain something for myself, and then hopefully it connects to it. So like when I'm feeling overwhelmed with life, because I'm a professor, I'm teaching jiu-jitsu, I'm traveling for conferences, I'm overseeing a multi-million-dollar facility, I'm a dad, being a good husband. Like when I'm bouncing all these things, I feel overwhelmed. I use the wellness wheel, and I've talked about it before, but the wellness wheel, definitely look it up. So it divides life into physical, emotional, spiritual, environmental, intellectual, and professional/financial. So anytime I notice I feel off, I kind of check in on myself on all those things. I go, how is my physical? Am I eating, sleeping, having the bowel movements I need to have, drinking enough water? I check in with myself physically. Then I check in with myself socially. Do I feel connected to people? Do I feel like I'm connecting with people that are meaningful to me and or building connections? Intellectually, like, do I feel like I'm expanding my perspective on life? I kind of go through each one of these things, and every time I feel overwhelmed, it's usually because I've been ignoring one of those. I haven't been getting enough sleep. I haven't been connecting with people. I haven't been, my house is a mess. So I feel chaotic as soon as I wake up and when I go to bed because of my own messy space, right? So same thing for a coach who's starting to feel overwhelmed, is really just check in with yourself, because you can't pour into someone else if you're at, right? You can't give anyone 100% if you're at zero, right? So it seems kind of counterintuitive. It's like, in order to give your students more, you need to give yourself more, which is check in with yourself and make sure that your cup is as full as possible. And then after doing that, you'll be surprised how much you don't feel as burnt out. So oftentimes for coaches, especially if they're just starting off, they usually are running multiple classes, potentially even by themselves, potentially running multiple privates. If it's jiu-jitsu, they oftentimes have another job as well, right? By doing that, you tend to be spending less time with friends or family, right? By doing that, you may also, once again, you're having multiple sources of income. So even the financials are kind of unsteady, right?
Yeah.
Depending on your living situation as well. So it's usually all these other factors that are then showing up in, hey, I, for some reason, feel burnt out in this thing that I absolutely love. But it's not actually that thing. It's all these other things that are, once again, completely depleted. So for the coach that's starting to feel burnt out, one, that makes sense. So also understand that you're not broken. You're not crazy. Your body's feeling exactly the way it's supposed to be feeling when you're running on empty. So I'd say is recharge yourself, but not recharge yourself just from the standpoint of doing one thing, but recharge yourself, once again, socially connected, environmentally, reconnect with nature, or clean your house and make sure your space is clean the way it wants to. Check with yourself financially and seeing maybe that's where some of the stress is coming. So really check with yourself holistically, and then you'll be able to pour back into this thing that you love, because you're there for a reason.
That was beautiful. Thank you so much. And what I might do is I might even leave like a link below to the wellness wheel. Like I'll just Google something. So if you are a coach that reads this, that watches this, I'll leave a little link below for the wellness wheel. Just take a look when you can, and see if you can start implementing that, because I think that the fatigue is something that I have personally experienced myself. I think I asked that question for myself more than anyone, but it is one of those things. So thank you. That was very, very insightful. And I've loved chatting to you. Thank you so much for your time, Jarell, honestly.
Don't ever hesitate to reach out, exchange messages. I'm sure we'll do it
Absolutely.
again.
And please, like anytime you see anything that we post or anything like that, chime in. I absolutely love seeing your comments and things like that. So, and if someone wants to follow you on Instagram as well, how do they find you?
My Instagram as of right now is Garcia Grip on Life, Garcia Grip on Life. And then, yeah, I think I have like my TED Talks on YouTube. And then, yeah, I have a link in my bio if you want to follow up on any of my other work as well.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jarell. Thank you so much for your time.
Thank you so much. Have a good one. You have a great day.
Thank you. You too. See you later.